Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. Our current session is on the direct method, opportunities and threats. I hope and expect by the end of this session you would be able to understand what are the opportunities and threats related to this particular method. Well, my dear students, learners have certain opportunities in the direct method, and one of the particular opportunities that is very significant is that it provides them chances to activate all channels of perception, which means they can use different senses, they can use their ear, they can use their speaking skill, they can use their sight, etc. So through all the channels, the input comes for this particular method. Moreover, language acquisition is facilitated by enormous authentic input. Now, if we compare this with L1 learning, actually the whole process of L1 learning takes place in a natural environment where there is a lot of input from the environment, where language being used around the learner makes the learner learn that language. And this method, the direct method, uses the same approach, and it also focuses on providing a lot of input. And this input that is selected for the direct method is always authentic material. This is always authentic input, which means it is real life material. It is taken from the real life activities and it relates to the everyday experiences of people. Another opportunity that it provides is that it facilitates understanding of language, because it does not merely focus on rules, or it does not focus on the superficial learning of rules through rote learning, because it believes in providing exposure to the target language. Thus, it facilitates the understanding of the language in the real sense of the word. Also, it provides understanding of the target language that becomes easier due to the inhibition of the linguistic inferences from the mother tongue. Whereas in the case of grammar translation method, L1 always becomes a hindrance, or it always interferes the learning process of L2. In this case, in the case of the direct method, since L1 is prohibited, it is not used. So in a very natural way, as some learner would learn L1, they are expected and they are supposed to learn L2. This, of course, helps in making it possible that there is no hindrance or there is no interference of L1. Furthermore, it establishes bond between contexts, because the authentic input that is provided to the learners, it comes from real life and it is contextualized. It enables the learners to establish links between different contexts, two different contexts, I would say, or among more than two contexts, and they would be able to distinguish how a particular structure of language can be used in a particular context. And because in the direct method, the focus is on the speaking skill, so naturally, one of the opportunities that it provides is to improve the fluency of the learners. So the learners who learn language through this method, they are far more fluent when it comes to speaking a language, particularly when we talk about English, for example. So they are far more fluent as compared to those who would learn it through the traditional conservative grammar translation method. Another opportunity that it provides to the learners is by aiding them in reading, by providing them support in reading, by helping them improve their reading skills. Reading becomes more pleasant, and it also promotes a habit of critical studying. Now, there are two important aspects of that. One, that reading becomes more pleasant. How does it become more pleasant? Because it is more relevant, because it is more contextualized. Unlike the classical literary texts that are used in grammar translation method, here lifelike materials are used, which generate interest among the students. And secondly, it develops a habit of critical studying, because Through the inductive method, the students or the learners learn how a certain rule is operating behind any authentic text or any structures that are used in that text. So through this process of learning, they also establish a habit of critical studying. It also improves the development of language sense. What do I mean by language sense? To be able to judge, to be able to feel, to be able to sense what is more appropriate in a particular situation. This is one of the huge advantages of this method. Furthermore, this method is full of activities which makes it interesting and exciting for the students. Students or learners, they do not get bored. Their interest is kept alive. The direct method also emphasizes the target language by helping the pupil express their thoughts and feelings directly in target language. So even if they struggle expressing themselves in the target language, gradually they improve upon that and they find it more natural to do that. It also develops listening, speaking, reading, and writing in a natural sequence, quite unlike the grammar translation method, where it starts from the writing and then it comes towards reading, and where there is no focus on as such speaking and listening. It also increases employment opportunities because it gives fluency to the students, because it puts them at ease in the use of language, because it prepares them to use language in everyday context with comfort and ease and with fluency. All this, of course, it opens up the opportunities for the learners in future when it comes to their jobs. It helps in bringing words from passive vocabulary into active vocabulary because they use them in their everyday speech. This method makes use of audiovisual aids and also facilitates reading and writing. I think the use of audiovisual aids is one of the great strengths, and it provides opportunities to the learners to be exposed to varied materials. It further facilitates alertness and participation of students. Unlike grammar translation method, where only the teacher would be active and students play a passive role, here the participation of students is very, very significant when it comes to the direct method. So it facilitates improving the alertness of the students and their participation in the classroom activities. As it offers a lot of opportunities, alongside it has its own threats. Out of the potential threats of this method, I would just point out a few which are significant. One is the lack of explicit rules that leads to various misinterpretations and problems in creative use of language. Since this method does not believe in teaching rules, since this method believes in the inductive learning process where the students would learn the rules only by using the language, and they themselves would filter it out or would understand what rule is working behind a particular structure or a grammatical structure. The disadvantage of that is that though they would be fluent, since they are not clear about the rule, there are possibilities that when it comes to creative use of language, they would be making errors or they would be making mistakes. Also, because drills are involved in that, so one of the potential threats of its use in the classroom is that it would be very much time consuming. It would take a lot of time in the classroom, and especially the classrooms where the number of students is more than, say, 10 or 20 students, the classes that are overcrowded, and where there is a constraint of time as well. In that situation, this time-consuming drill becomes one of the weaknesses of this particular method. Another threat related to it is that it ignores systematic written work and reading activities. Since more focus is on listening and reading, though writing and reading are given some importance, but the systematic teaching of reading and writing are most of the times ignored. And especially when it comes to young teachers, in their enthusiasm to teach listening and speaking, they often ignore reading and writing. It supports only limited vocabulary. Why? Because it comes through the drills, of course. Furthermore, only the clever child can profit by this method. A smart child who can grasp the implicit rules, who can grasp whatsoever is presented in the class, a child who is very alert, a child who is very much motivated, of course, would have benefit from that, from this particular method. But what about those learners who are average learners or who are weak? So this method has potential threats in that regard. Furthermore, this needs skilled teachers who can design drills, who can demonstrate, who can motivate the students in the class. It also does not suit or satisfy the needs of individual students in large classes. And it is inconvenient in a huge class. For a small group, it works, yes, but for a bigger group, it would not. Also, it ignores reading and writing aspects of language, which is one of the threats, especially in the context like Pakistan, where all the examination systems focus more on writing.